8. Giclopterus. Let's rewind history to a time when dinosaurs roamed our planet, and before 95% of all organisms went extinct due to the Great Dying. Let's go back to the Paleozoic era. The Earth's history at this time, between 524 million and 252 million years ago, had all kinds of creatures that aren't around today. Arthropods, or animals with exoskeletons, such as crustaceans, insects, horseshoe crabs, ranged in extreme sizes, from itty-bitty to humongous. Is it that surprising that prehistoric arthropods could be just as massive as a T-Rex? Okay, maybe not as big, or a Tyrannosaurus, but still huge. Picture an enormous scorpion raging out of the ocean with its claws pointed straight at you. That is the Giclopterus. A 400 million year old fossil found near Germany was the largest arthropod to have ever been discovered. It took a bit of calculation to determine just how big this ancient animal was, but after finding a claw that measured almost 18 inches or 46 centimeters long, scientists compared research and determined the monster could have actually been up to 12 feet or 3.6 meters long, over twice the height of an average man. Although the Giclopterus is known as a sea scorpion, scientists believe these arthropods were more likely to be found terrorizing lakes and rivers. Back then, these giants could be compared to a crocodile in terms of where they belong on the food chain. They would have been incredible swimmers, using their large front legs armed with colossal claws to snatch up their prey. Scientists aren't clear what kind of prey the Giclopterus ate, but believe it probably dined on smaller fish and arthropods, and if they were around today, maybe humans. Number 7. Megalodon. Of course, a list of prehistoric creatures from the ocean wouldn't be complete without mentioning the one and only fearsome Megalodon. The name itself means giant tooth in Greek, and it was, in fact, the largest fish that ever lived. If you can even call a 60-foot or 18-meter shark a fish, it was about 3 times larger than the largest shark lurking in our oceans right now. Fish are mostly cold-blooded, but the Megalodon may have been more like today's great white sharks, which are considered partially warm-blooded because of the heat they produce while swimming. This would have allowed the Megalodon to hunt in much colder waters, and it had to hunt a lot. Being that big meant it had to consume at least 2,500 pounds, or just over 1,100 kilos of food per day. It was an apex predator, feeding on whales, dolphins, other sharks, pretty much anything that got in its way. Sharks don't have bones like other marine creatures, so most of what we know about Megalodon comes from its large fossil teeth. The largest Megalodon tooth ever found was 6.9 inches, nice, or 18 centimeters long. That's about 3 times longer than the average tooth of a great white shark. Its mouth was 10 feet, 3 meters, and researchers guess it had the most powerful bite force of all time. Fossils of the Megalodon have been found on nearly every continent except Antarctica, meaning they ruled pretty much every drop of water on the planet. Even though dinosaurs and megalodons are now both extinct, they did not exist at the same time. The dinosaurs died out roughly 66 million years ago, and the megalodons came after that. The oldest megalodon fossils are from around 23 million years ago, during the Miocene epoch. 6. Liopleurodon. The Liopleurodon is a massive marine reptile from the Jurassic period. 150 to 160 million years ago, ancient marine mammals were split into plesiosaurs and pliosaurs, with Liopleurodons being in the second category. The characteristics of the pliosaurs included short necks with long heads and long flippers on a thick torso. Their front teeth protruded from their mouths, and its name actually means smooth-sided teeth in Greek, so it's a fitting description. First estimates of a fossil found in France in 1873 put the length of the body at 85 feet or 26 meters long, but the animal's proportions are now believed to be closer to 20 feet or just 6 meters. This is only a guess based on the size of its skull. Pliosaurs had very big heads compared to their bodies, so original estimates were a little exaggerated. At the time Liopleurodon was around, Western Europe was engulfed in shallow water. It is here where the Liopleurodon is believed to have dined on fish, squids, and other smaller marine reptiles. Some experts believe they could have weighed up to 10 tons or 20,000 pounds into adulthood. Despite their size, they are believed to have been excellent swimmers due to their large, flat flippers that would have helped propel them through the water. Now, a lot of the prehistoric marine reptiles didn't have gills, so just like the whales and dolphins swimming in the ocean today, Liopleurodons would occasionally have to return to the surface of the water for big gulps of air. When the Cretaceous period rolled around some 150 million years ago, the underwater domain of Liopleurodon was dominated by Mosasaurus, a vicious breed of marine reptiles. It took time, but the pliosaurs were eventually replaced, and now only exist in the history books. Have you ever heard of this prehistoric monster from the ocean? Let me know in the comments below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe button if you haven't already. 5. Cretoxyrhina. Perhaps all a prehistoric shark needs is a catchy little nickname to get attention. That's what happened with the awkwardly named Cretoxyrhina, aka Cretaceous Jaws. This shark became even more popular 100 years after its original discovery when a paleontologist dubbed it the Ginsu shark. There was once a late-night infomercial for the Ginsu knife, which was apparently able to slice and dice with ease. Anyways, I digress. Cretoxyrhina was without a doubt one of the biggest sharks and most formidable predators in the sea during the late Cretaceous period. The Cretoxyrhina ripped its prey apart with its mouth full of razor-sharp, bone-shearing teeth. It was at the top of the food chain, and its teeth were each almost 3 inches or 7.6 centimeters long, allowing them to chomp through thick shells and bones. Their tails were also believed to have developed to give them a quick burst of speed, which means they not only ate tough, but fast prey. Evidence suggests Cretoxyrhina fed on plesiosaurs, mosasaurs, and even Zoophactinus, the giant bony fish which was a fierce predator itself. First discovered in the mid-1800s, this ancient beast really made a splash when some 50 years later, hundreds of teeth and part of a spinal column were located in Kansas of all places. Found in what was once the Western Interior Sea, the massive predator was located in an area between 2 ancient islands that was once populated by dinosaurs. If you have any doubt about its ferocity, specimens have been found with the undigested remnants of the giant Cretaceous fish Zoophactinus, as well as the Tylosaurus, a 35-foot long or 10-meter, 7-ton or 1,400-pound reptile. Number 4. Dunkleosteus. Marine animals that existed during the Devonian period, over 100 million years before the first dinosaurs, tended to be small and meek. But there is always an exception to the rule, and the Dunkleosteus was just that. It was enormous! It reached about 30 feet or 9 meters long and weighed 3 or 4 tons, 6,000 to 8,000 pounds. Its skin was as tough as armor. This prehistoric fish was most likely the largest vertebrate of its time, and for sure the biggest fish in the Devonian seas. It is likely that the Dunkleosteus resembled a large underwater tank with its bulging head, thick body, and massive toothless jaw. Does knowing it didn't have any teeth make it less scary? Dunkleosteus probably wasn't the best swimmer, since its bony armor would have been sufficient defense against the smaller predatory sharks and fish of its briny habitat, such as Cladosalaki, and it probably moved around a bit slower than other fish. Times were tough in the Devonian period though. The Dunkleosteus is known to have cannibalized its own kind when other fish became scarce. All the fossils found say that they did have particularly strong jaws, even without teeth, with a whopping 8,000 pounds per square inch of force with every bite, which allowed them to take down even the fiercest shark. Its bite was almost twice as strong as that of a modern-day crocodile. They're sometimes called the Tyrannosaurus of the seas. They were as big as an elephant and longer than a London bus. However, like many other monster-sized predators of bygone eras, it seems a drop in oceanic oxygen levels killed off the giant fish that once roamed the seas. 3. Dakosaurus. The Dakosaurus was a bit of a strange creature. Technically, it was a prehistoric crocodile, but it looked like it had been put together with the parts of various other creatures. With long, clumsy hind flippers, paddle-like legs that helped maneuver its fish-like tail through the water, and a head similar to a terrestrial dinosaur. Studies show that it most likely wasn't a very fast swimmer, except when it came to hunting its food, like squid and other marine reptiles. It had large, jagged teeth and an incredibly powerful bite that could crunch through the shells of prehistoric mollusks. The Dakosaurus was probably able to take down animals much larger than itself. It is believed to have lived in the shallow seas around Eurasia, as well as North and South America. Measuring up to 15 feet or 4.5 meters long and weighing from 1,000 to 2,000 pounds or 455 to around 900 kilos, they were smaller than a saltwater crocodile but weighed more than a cow. It lived approximately 150 million to 130 million years ago, from the late Jurassic period through to the early Cretaceous period. Friedrich August von Quinstead first discovered the Dakosaurus in the Andes Mountains during the mid-19th century, and its name actually means tearing lizard. Dakosaurus has an unusually long pedigree. The type species of the genus was originally mistaken for a specimen of Geosaurus, and before that, scattered Dakosaurus teeth were mistaken for that of the terrestrial dinosaur Megalosaurus. Fast forward to 2005, when the skull of another specimen was found that was so large and fearsome, the team nicknamed their find Godzilla. This fascinating discovery would drastically change the history of marine crocodiles as scientists knew it. As it turns out, the Dakosaurus still had secrets to reveal. As they started to adapt to the shallow seas around North and South America, the animals started to change, giving it its distinctive look. Sadly though, its primitive flippers probably didn't allow the animal to move very well in the water, and by the time the early Cretaceous period came around, they had died off. 2. Thalattoarchon. There were many large predators in prehistoric times, but one that stands out for its particularly toothy grin is an ichthyosaur known as Thalattoarchon, which dominated the seas about 245 million years ago. Dubbed the lizard-eating ruler of the seas by paleontologists, the first specimen of the animal was found in the late 1990s in the Augusta Mountains in Nevada. Located in Middle Triassic rock, it would take until 2008 for the fossil to be retrieved, but when it was, it would prove to be quite the fascinating find. With the back of the skull, the vertebral columns, parts of the hip, and some elements of the rear fins uncovered, the estimated length of the animal in its prime was around 28 feet, or 8.5 meters. It had pointed, conical teeth that measured about 4 inches, or 10 centimeters, with 2 cutting surfaces, which made slurping down slippery fish and squid an easy feat. They also had a head that was almost twice as large for its body compared to other ichthyosaurs. The specimen was found in a quarry along with other animals that researchers found had evolved from land dwellers into those that spent some of their time in the sea. Living only 5 million years after the worst mass extinction event in the world's history, Thalattoarchon shows that ocean life was able to bounce back from the surrounding catastrophe within just a few million years after mass extinction. By adapting to oceanic life, Thalattoarchon survived and set the stage for the future of other ocean-dwelling predators. 1. Pliosaurus Funkei. With a name like Predator X, you knew researchers had found a stunning example of prehistoric life when they uncovered the first Pliosaurus Funkei specimen. But the big-headed marine reptile found on an Arctic island had no problem living up to its nickname. With a bite 4 times stronger than T-Rex, Pliosaurus Funkei was a short-necked marine reptile with 4 paddles on its feet. With 2 discoveries made between 2004 and 2012, scientists uncovered jaw fragments, vertebrae from the neck and back, and parts of the right forelimb. The second largest specimen found included the back of the skull, vertebra, and unidentified bones. Prior to that, only part of a tail vertebrae had been found. With paleontologists only finding incomplete specimens, it makes it hard to determine the actual size of any given animal. But after piecing them together, they estimated the Pliosaurus Funkei was up to 50 feet or a whopping 15 meters long, with its skull from 6 to 8 feet or 1.8 to 2.4 meters long, and its body stretching from 33 to 42 feet, 10 to 13 meters. Without a complete skull, bite force analysis could not be completed, but from its bones alone, it was clear to see this marine predator, one of the largest pliosaurs described, was once an impressive prehistoric beast from the ocean.
Number 10. Amazonian river monster in Florida. In Florida, a monster all the way from the Amazon has been spotted. This happened in 2021, as if Florida wasn't dealing with enough invasive species already. Forget about the invasive pythons. Now Florida has to deal with monstrous beasts living in the rivers too. A beast that can grow to over 10 feet or 3 meters in length while weighing up to 200 pounds, over 90 kilos. The monster is also armored like a tank and can headbutt a person with the force of a 10-ton hammer. I'm of course talking about the arapaima, a dominant predator that lives throughout South America in the Amazon River. How exactly it got to Florida is something of a mystery. So far, only one has been found. A local woman came upon the carcass of one of these giant fish, which happened to be larger than her 7-year-old daughter. The fish also had a hook in its mouth, suggesting someone had tried to catch it only to have it get away. And that's no surprise, seeing as the arapaima is one of the strongest river fish in the world. How many arapaima are living in Florida is unknown. Nobody has any idea if it really is an invasion or just a really scary coincidence. But in any case, the arapaima is the king of the jungle river, and maybe now king of Florida's rivers. Number 9. African Lungfish. The African lungfish is another horrifying monster that lives in rivers, but it also lives in freshwater swamps throughout West Africa and South Africa. The lungfish is a prehistoric animal that goes way back before even the age of the dinosaurs. The African lungfish is quite similar to the coelacanth in that it is a living fossil. According to Oregon Zoo, the African lungfish has gone unchanged for over 400 million years. That makes it one of the oldest living animals on the entire planet. So what is so perfect about the lungfish that it hasn't needed to evolve in almost 500 million years? Well, it has a few clever adaptations. First, it has 2 lungs and is able to breathe air. Second, the lungfish is able to secrete a layer of mucus to form a cocoon around itself, which it can then live in for up to a year if its home in the swamp gets dried up. The fish hides in its cocoon, breathing through its lungs until rainfall fills the swamp back up with water. African lungfish are omnivorous, with a diet consisting mainly of fish, frogs and mollusks, as well as seeds and tree roots. They range in size from 6.5 to 40 inches, so about 17 to 100 centimeters long, and can weigh up to nearly 8 pounds or 3.5 kilos. The most interesting thing about the lungfish though is that it can use its hind limbs to push itself off the bottom of the riverbed or swamp, propelling itself forward like a miniature rocket. Scientists believe the lungfish is closely related to whichever animal eventually used its hind legs to crawl out of the water and onto the land, where it eventually evolved into you and me. Are we all essentially just lungfish? Number 8. The Thames River Monster. The Thames River Monster is a supposed creature that lives, of course, in the Thames River in the United Kingdom and looks like a giant serpent. The Thames River runs through London, the busiest city in all of the UK. Sightings of the snaky beast have primarily been made in Greenwich, with eyewitnesses claiming the monster is anywhere between 30 to 170 feet in length. That's up to 50 metres long. Now, it's important to understand that there's obviously no creature on Earth 170 feet or 50 metres long. Even the legendary prehistoric Titanoboa wasn't that long. That said, there could definitely be a creature very similar to the Loch Ness Monster with a length of between 30 and 50 feet or 9 and 15 metres lurking somewhere in the huge river. There has actually been footage uploaded to YouTube where a large and serpent-like animal has been seen slinking through the water near the O2 Arena. Some claim it was nothing but a whale, others said it could be Godzilla, and some people called it a submarine. Unfortunately, no real monster has ever been caught in the Thames River, and until someone finally pulls an angry sea monster from the water, we just won't know for sure what's hiding down there. Do you think it's possible for a creature that big to remain hidden for this long? What is it? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe button if you haven't already. Number 7. Goliath Tigerfish. The Goliath Tigerfish is humongous, ferocious, and absolutely horrifying. This frightening monster lives throughout Africa and is the biggest member of the tigerfish genus. It has teeth that look an awful lot like incredibly sharp daggers. The biggest one ever caught weighed over 150 pounds, over 70 kilos, and it is faster and more powerful than any other African game fish. According to Animal Planet, locals say that the Goliath tigerfish is actually the only fish in Africa that doesn't live in fear of other horrifying river monsters like crocodiles. It's even been known to feast on the smaller ones. Animal Planet also claims there have been attacks on humans by this angry fish. It's the bully of the Congo Basin. This monster fish puts more energy into killing than it does into breeding. The local population of the Goliath Tigerfish takes 5 to 14 years to multiply, so trying to catch one isn't recommended, and it is almost impossible to catch with a fishing rod, seeing as it's so strong it can just snap the line. There's even one safari promoter that makes their clients read a cautionary warning about the Goliath fish before venturing off on a fishing trip. In other words, this is one mean fish, and perhaps the scariest in all of the African waterways. Number 6. 100-foot snake. In Borneo, there was a photograph taken that allegedly showed a snake over 100 feet or 30 meters in length. The photograph was supposedly taken by someone on a team of scientists monitoring the region by helicopter. And while there's no doubt that the photograph itself is real, there has been a lot of controversy lately over whether the snake seen slithering up the waterway is factual or a hoax. After all, the biggest snake in the world is the green anaconda, which lives in South America, nowhere near Borneo. The anaconda can only grow to a maximum of 28 to 30 feet or 9 meters. Even the extinct titanoboa never grew much larger than around 42 feet or 13 meters. A snake of this size would not only be a miracle, it would be a legend come to life. If real, it would flip everything scientists know about snakes and wildlife on its head. Number 5. Payara. The Payara is at the top of the food chain when it comes to South American rivers. There is absolutely nothing appealing about this crazy looking fish. It is freakishly large, with a mouth that looks too big, full of scary teeth, and some have even compared it to a wolf in the water. It is also commonly known as the vampire fish for a very good reason. It has 2 extremely long teeth protruding from its lower jaw that are so long they can stick straight through your forearm and come out the other side. Ouch! These fangs can measure between 4 and 6 inches or 10 to 15 centimeters in length, and they're so sizable that Payaras are born with holes in their upper jaws to fit them until their mouths grow to the monster proportions they reach. The Payara can grow to roughly 3 feet or a meter long and weigh up to 35 pounds or 16 kilos. And while this isn't that large, it's the fish's carnivorous enthusiasm which makes it such a danger. It's like a bigger and scarier version of a piranha, and even more aggressive. They can chase off bigger fish. They're very hard to catch on the end of a fishing line, and if you're not careful while swimming in their territory, you might get a Payara's fangs stuck in your backside. Number 4. Bluefin Monster. A huge monster fish was found in the River Severn, recorded at being 7 feet or 2.1 meters long and weighing 150 pounds or 68 kilos. It was discovered by a trio of friends one day while they were just paddleboarding through Gloucestershire in the United Kingdom. They were shocked upon the discovery and at first had no idea what the massive fish even was. The beast was later identified as a bluefin tuna, which is incredibly strange because it shouldn't have been anywhere near the UK. Bluefin tuna live in warm seawater hundreds of miles away. They typically live in the ocean and can be found diving up to 3,000 feet, almost 1,000 meters deep. These impressive fish are built like aquatic torpedoes and have the best vision out of any bony fish in the whole world. There are 3 species of bluefin tuna, with the largest and most endangered being the Atlantic bluefin. So how did this incredible beast get stuck inside of a British river? Well, nobody really knows. The only reasonable explanation is that it got lost. It ended up swimming straight into the river's mouth, and by the time the 3 friends on their paddleboards found it, the fish was already dead. What would you do if you found a fish where it didn't belong? Number 3. Amazon Stingray. One of the most dangerous river monsters in the world is the fearsome Amazon stingray, also called the freshwater stingray. It's been blamed for numerous deaths and, according to the Smithsonian National Zoo, is actually responsible for more injuries to humans every year than any other species in the Amazon. Amazon stingrays are quite rare. They live specifically in the Amazon River, and they are one of the only rays to inhabit freshwater instead of saltwater. The Amazon stingray can grow to be huge, with a width of about 1.5 feet and tails that can grow over 1 foot or 30 centimeters long. They spend their time hiding in the mud of the riverbed, waiting patiently before ambushing smaller fish. They have mighty powerful jaws that can crush clams and mussels, though they also like to eat shrimps and worms. At this point, you're probably wondering what makes the stingray so dangerous. It's the tail that causes the most harm to humans, as it has a stinger with barbs that can effortlessly puncture your skin. And when that happens, you're going to be injected with venom. The venom isn't usually fatal, but it can cause intense pain, and other than pain, if the stinger happens to pierce something vital like your heart or lung, you can end up bleeding to death in the water. Number 2. Alligator Gar. The alligator gar isn't necessarily deadly, however, it is pretty scary to look at. Alligator gars can get huge, up to 6 feet or 1.8 meters and over 100 pounds or 45 kilos. They also look kind of like dinosaurs, or at least something that would be swimming alongside dinosaurs millions of years ago. There are 4 species of gar found in Texas, but the alligator gar is indisputably the most striking. It's also the largest. As hard as it is to believe, there is no relation between alligators and alligator gars. They're merely named alligators because they have heads that look sort of crocodilian, and teeth that could easily belong in an alligator's mouth. The relatives of gars appeared around 157 million years ago, but now their modern descendants only live throughout North America and Central America. According to National Geographic, they began in the Mississippi River Valley, but can now be found as far north as Nebraska. Luckily, alligator gars aren't that dangerous. So long as you don't stick your finger in its mouth, you should be fine. Just keep in mind that these beasts can grow larger than a human and have teeth as sharp as razors, so they must be treated with vigilance and respect. Number 1. Monster Salmon. When a park ranger was wandering through an old forest in California, he discovered an impressive trove of prehistoric fossils. This is nothing new for California, as it's known to be a fossil hotbed. What really shocked scientists is that among the fossils were the remains of a monster salmon that would have been 400 pounds or 180 kilos when it was alive. Some of these fossils date back 10 million years. According to Live Science, paleontologists sent in to investigate the site also found fossils of a mastodon, an extinct camel larger than a giraffe, and something known as a gomphothère, an ancient ancestor to modern elephants. A lot of these fossils were probably carried into the area during floods, though the salmon may have lived in an ancient river that once went through the region. To give you an idea of just how big this prehistoric salmon was, the largest species of living salmon today is the king salmon, which can only grow to about 126 pounds or 57 kilos. That means that whatever was swimming up the river to lay its eggs millions of years ago was roughly 4 times larger than any living salmon today, making it a true river monster.
11. Frozen Paws. A poor cat named Salmon was recently stuck in the ice in Russia. His whiskers were coated in frost and his fur hard as a rock. The very fluffy cat managed to get all 4 of its paws stuck inside of the ice when the temperature dropped to around minus 31 degrees Fahrenheit. The poor cat was unable to move since its paws were frozen, and it likely would have died of hypothermia if not for a pair of good Samaritans. Sergei Baranov and his wife Yelena spotted the chilly kitty hiding underneath their vehicle, completely frozen. The couple used 7 buckets of warm water to melt the ice around Simon's paws, ultimately freeing the cat from his icy prison. According to the Siberian Times, the couple wrapped the cat in a thick blanket and took him to a nearby vet. By the end of the day, the young cat was back to his usual self. It was able to walk and eat and was purring, happy to be alive. Then a few days later, Simon was adopted by a local in the neighborhood. 10. Frozen horses. In Russia, a herd of horses got into a heap of trouble when they fell through the surface of a frozen pond and nearly turned into icicles. 7 horses had been crossing over the frozen pond when the ice broke and they fell in. Luckily, nearby farmers were able to jump into action and save the chilly beasts. 2 of the horses managed to scramble out of the icy waters without too much trouble, but the rest needed to be wrangled by the farmers. According to one of the men involved in the rescue attempt, the horses walked onto the ice out of habit, seeing as it's usually over a foot thick. They hadn't anticipated being dropped into the water. The horses are used to the cold because they live in Russia, but they were definitely not ready to be that cold. In the end, the last 2 horses needed to be pulled out of the pond using special harnesses and construction equipment. But thankfully, no horse lives were lost that day and they made a full recovery. Good thing the farmers were around to save them. 9. Freezing bats. At the Toronto Wildlife Centre, workers recently struggled to save the lives of over 50 bats who nearly froze to death. According to Natalie Carvonen, the executive director of the centre, the bats were literally dropping out of the air and dying from the bitter cold. The bats were discovered outside near a local mall after they had been rudely awoken from their hibernation and exposed to the freezing temperatures, which hovered around -2.2 degrees Fahrenheit. Unfortunately, 6 of the bats froze to death and died before rescue staff could arrive on scene, but luckily, the staff were able to transport the rest back to the Wildlife Centre, where they hand-fed them and warmed the little brown bats, which were so small and cold they only weighed about 15 grams. A single bat can fit in the palm of your hand. It took rescue workers a full 12 hours to hand-feed the bats mealworms and get them back to normal. The bats typically eat about 40 mealworms a day, so the process was quite time-consuming. Unfortunately, it proved much tougher to convince the bats to go back into hibernation. Staff members couldn't let them go back out in the wild because of the freezing temperatures. The air was so cold that the bats would never have made it back to shelter. And there wasn't really any proper place inside the centre for the bats to hibernate. So instead, these cuddly buddies were kept in captivity until the weather heated up and there was no more risk of them freezing to death. 8. Popsicle Rat. Try not to barf. A woman in China got a very ugly surprise in her dessert when she discovered a dead rat frozen inside of a popsicle that she had already been eating. This Chinese woman ate almost half the popsicle and didn't realize there was a frozen rat inside of it until she saw its fuzzy little tail sticking out through the middle. At first, she thought the tail was a caterpillar. She tried to pull the caterpillar out of the popsicle but found it was wedged in tight. That's when she realized she was pulling on a rat's tail. What happened next is kind of hilarious. The woman went back to the store where she had purchased her frozen popsicle and demanded compensation for her trauma. She did this with the rat still stuck inside the popsicle. The shop owner offered to give her dozens of free popsicles, but who could possibly accept that? There were probably more rats in them. She wanted money for her troubles and demanded cash, but she didn't get as much as she wanted and walked away with a bitter taste in her mouth. But that could have just been the rat. That is so disgusting. What would you do if you found a rat in your frozen treat? Would you react like this woman did? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. 7. Ancient frozen goat. A hiker exploring a remote part of the Italian Alps recently stumbled upon the preserved remains of a 400-year-old goat frozen in the ice. You can imagine his surprise. The hiker's name was Herman Oberlechner, and he was on a 6-hour hike in the south of Italy when he discovered a very old species of goat antelope that only lived in the European mountains. Only half of the poor goat was exposed from the snow, with the rest of his body frozen completely solid. There wasn't much the hiker could do at the time, so he took a photo and then showed it to the park ranger. The Alpine Army Corps then got involved to rescue the ancient goat from its icy prison, 10,500 feet or 3,200 meters above the sea. According to Science Times, the goat's body was extracted and brought to a laboratory to be studied. Researchers haven't found out much about the goat yet, but they're hoping to learn more about DNA deterioration in frozen mummies, which can help researchers be more prepared for when prehistoric animals and ancient humans are discovered frozen in the ice. 6. Yuka, a woolly mammoth. The ice in Siberia is melting at an alarming rate, and because of this, some pretty spectacular discoveries have been made over the years. Scientists get really excited over prehistoric discoveries in the ice, so you can well imagine the excitement when in 2010, Yuka, a 39,000-year-old female woolly mammoth, was discovered in the Siberian wilderness. What is really spectacular about the find was the fact that Yuka weighed almost a ton, or 2,000 pounds. And while it isn't uncommon for frozen cadavers of mammoths to pop up all over Siberia, Yuka was the best preserved one till date. Yuka's body was so well preserved that her hair and tissue was still completely intact and visible. In fact, even more incredible was how scientists could draw blood from the mammoth. Jurassic Park, anyone? Scientists all across the world wanted to study Yuka, but it was South Korean scientists who made the most startling revelation by saying Yuka was so well preserved that they could easily extract her DNA and clone a woolly mammoth. How would you feel if scientists were able to clone a mammoth? Let me know in the comments below. 5. A dog in a block of ice. This will probably be the saddest thing you've heard in a while. Authorities in British Columbia recently launched an investigation into animal cruelty after a dog was discovered literally encased inside a block of ice on a man's front lawn. The dead dog was first discovered by the homeowner, who claimed he had no idea how a frozen dog ended up on his property. The homeowner was obviously quite upset. The shape of the block of ice suggested that the dog had been frozen inside of a rubber bin. The poor dog was medium-sized with a black coat. Nobody really knows how the dog died, how it had gotten stuck inside of a rubber bin and froze to death, or why someone would have left it on a random stranger's front lawn. The case made no sense, and as far as we know right now, there were never any solid leads made in the investigation. 4. Japan's ice monkeys. In Japan, there is a wild group of monkeys that live in the snow. They're often called the ice monkeys of Japan, and while they aren't usually frozen solid, they do spend the brutal winters covered in snow and trying to stay warm. How and where do these monkeys stay heated? They do it at the Jigokudani Monkey Park, where they bathe in the park's natural hot spring. Jigokudani, where the park is located, translates to Hell Valley and is a common name for Japanese valleys with volcanic activity. The Japanese macaques are native to the forests around the area, populated today by onsens, traditional Japanese bathhouses. These monkeys live in a large social group. They can be spotted all around the hot spring and are well adapted to life in the snow. However, that doesn't stop them from soaking in the warm waters on especially cold days, keeping their monkey hair from freezing. But perhaps the coolest part about this whole thing is that there is a live camera beside the monkey pool that can be watched online 24/7. From between December and March, you can see the snow monkeys staving off the cold by sitting in the pool while the snow comes down all around them. The park's open all year round, but the bathing monkeys are particularly photogenic when the area is covered in snow. Forget the Fireplace channel next Christmas and put on the Snow Monkey channel. 3. Stranded deer. A hero in Wisconsin recently saved a stranded deer from a frozen water reservoir. The poor deer had become stuck on the ice and couldn't move his legs. Apparently, it stood still for a little too long in that spot. The unnamed hero told local news stations that he didn't even think twice about rescuing the helpless animal. But, of course, the deer did not want to cooperate. In the end, the hero had to push the deer across the frozen surface like a sled. Eventually, the deer was pushed close enough to the edge of the ice that she could get her footing. She stood up, slipped and stumbled a bit, but managed to hobble onto dry land. The deer then sprinted as fast as she could back into the forest, maybe a little too shy to stick around and thank her rescuer. 2. Freezing bird. A seagull fell asleep on a canal in Germany. Overnight, the temperature dropped significantly and the bird woke up frozen inside a block of ice. But the bird wasn't dead. It may have been up to its neck in hard ice, but it was still breathing. Somebody actually found the poor bird and alerted the police of the situation, who came down to rescue the helpless thing. The police broke apart the block of ice that the seagull was trapped in and then waited while the ice around its feet slowly melted. They also fed the gull some fish while they were waiting for the ice to melt. Once the bird was 100% liberated from its frozen prison, it flew away and seemed to be perfectly fine. But the same couldn't be said for everyone in the region. This particular winter storm caused massive amounts of damage, with hundreds of homeless people dying and many others being displaced because of the cold. At least this one stubborn seagull made it out alive. 1. Arctic hippo. Fossil evidence was recently discovered in the Arctic that has led scientists to confirm that the Arctic Circle was once more like Florida than the icy tundra of today. Some of the most fascinating pieces of evidence were fossil footprints that showed an ancient hippopotamus that weighed at least 880 pounds, or 400 kilos, living in the Arctic Circle around 55 million years ago. Back then, greenhouse gases were more abundant in the air. This meant bigger animals and a balmier climate. The weird hippopotamus footprints were found inside of a horizontal coal mine shaft in Norway, a couple of miles inside the mountain and at least 900 feet, or 274 meters, beneath the surface. According to a professional in ancient ecology at the Utrecht University in the Netherlands named Appie Slaus, the frigid Arctic of Norway was once a temperate rainforest. As for the hippo footprints found frozen in ice, well, they actually belong to what is known as a pandodont. This plant-eating animal wasn't exactly the hippopotamus as we know it today. Instead, the pandodont was one of the first mammals to evolve after the death of the dinosaurs, and possibly one of the earliest ancestors of the modern hippo. Thanks for watching. Have you ever seen an animal frozen in ice? What did you do? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe and come back soon for another awesome video. See you next time!